So everybody, welcome to our monthly Young Professionals call. We are like major spoiled here for those of you who are at Coupon U, I refer to Mike as my stage partner, but we are lucky enough to have our Director of National Sales on the call, Mike Hayes. As you all know, we've been trying to make our calls stick to the topics of professional development. And Mike's got some information that I think you all are going to find fascinating that really pertains to every single person on the call in all varying ways, and he'll share that in just a minute, but I just want to give a quick intro. Mike's been with Valpak for 14 years? No,
I think it's been about 14 years.
Yeah, long time, and probably the majority of it being in national sales, wouldn't you say? And then you've been in key accounts. You were franchise development director, so I actually reported to Mike at one time. He's probably still in recovery. Also ran training. So this guy knows what you do and what your world is, which is great. But he is back in national sales as our director, so he kind of knows a thing or two about calling on large accounts. Oh, there you are. Did you like how I put that picture of you in there?
It looks like there's a gap in between my teeth or something. Did you have to use that one?
Oh, no, yeah, you might. But I'm going to let Mike take it from here, and then at the end, if you have a question during, jump in, but we will have time at the end for Q&A and, picking Mike's brain. You don't have to stick to the topic of what he's on. You can ask him anything. Right, Mike?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you guys feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask a question or disagree. I really love, I've always got somebody in the crowd who's like, that he does not know what he's talking about. That always works for me. That's bullshit. There's always somebody that feels that way. I'd much rather you jump in and disagree with me on that, and let's talk about, how things could be this way or that. Because when I talk about a couple of topics I have to speak today, and a couple of major buckets are primarily in the field of top-performing reps and really large clients. So I'm going to be speaking in some generalities, knowing that there is no one way that works every single time. So, keep that in mind. What I'm saying is just what I found to be true, generally speaking, and there's always going to be exceptions to any of these rules. So feel free to jump in if something doesn't make sense or you need to ask a question. The reason why I wanted to talk about these particular topics with you guys is I was kind of thinking like, what might be the thing that I bring to the conversation that I've had some unique experience with. And I say it's unique because I've had the opportunity over the years to really work with all level of sales, right down to, going door to door in strip malls, walking in, and trying to sell stuff on the spot, all the way up to selling Fortune 500 companies. And during that time, I've been in a great position to be able, especially since I've been in a sales leadership role, to not just, work on my own style and my own presentation, but be exposed to a lot of great salespeople and a lot of great advertising buyers. And for me personally, like the thing that intrigues me the most is just like general human behavior, anything related to sociology. So I know there's probably a couple of the guys and girls on the phone here that I probably wouldn't know it, but I'm watching you closely and asking myself, how does that person do that thing so well? What is it about them that makes them excel in that particular category? It's just something that's always intrigued me. I was at my 30-year class reunion, to expose my age here, last weekend, and there were for whatever reason, there were a lot of people from my graduating class that were in fields of like sociology and psychology and emergency room, and one was a parole officer and one worked in a prison. And I asked them all the same thing. I'm like, what is the craziest human story you can tell me? Because people acting bizarre also intrigues me as much as people that do things really great. So that is a little bit about my background and the thing I'm most intrigued in. And I came today prepared to share a couple of the things that I've observed that salespeople do really well, the people that are really good at doing their jobs here at Valpak, and also some of the larger clients that we work with, and some of the things that they respond to. So hopefully from that you guys can take something away today. So What I had done a couple of years ago, and some of you may have seen this data, so I apologize if it's old information to some of you. Sally reassured me that there were a lot of new people on the phone today that could benefit from seeing this stuff. We actually did a survey not too long ago of our top national clients. We had 33 respondents in this group, and these are large national companies. And you can kind of see what the breakdown is. It's a pretty impressive group of people that responded to some of these questions that I'm going to share with you, and also the answers that they gave. To begin with, having some technical difficulty, there we go. To begin with, the first question that we asked them, we said, hey, consider your initial contact from a media sales associate and rank the following contact methods where 1 is the most preferred initial contact and 4 is the least preferred. And we threw out a few different questions for them, a few different options, and you can see how they responded. These are actually weighted responses, so you can kind of see, not a big surprise here. A lot of people want to be contacted by email, but also, you know, the phone call is not completely dead yet. So amongst the large account salespeople and just really good salespeople that I see, they're not leaning too heavily on just one of these contact methods. The people that I see that do well are utilizing all these different methods to get in touch with people. You know, I regularly see our own national salespeople get in touch through LinkedIn, for example, in the messaging. So generally speaking, although they have their preferences, we've definitely found that I've found that the salespeople that are doing this particularly well are using all of those. We also asked the question, what's the best time of day to reach you? Well, we got a variety of different answers there, but no big surprise. People answered that they wanted to be contacted during bank hours, if you will. However, I was a little surprised to see that there were some people that actually preferred to be contacted before 8 o'clock or after 5 p.m. And I don't know if you guys are doing this or not, but, you know, why not try it if they're not replying? And I think the important thing is, and the thing that I've learned is that regardless of what they may be telling you, the higher up the food chain you get, the higher up to an executive level in these large companies, you actually have a much better chance of getting a hold of them when other people aren't there. And I'll share with you a little technique that I've used in the past successfully to get a hold of people. I will send them emails on a Sunday, and that seems to be the time when CEOs are most likely to respond. And it's not too difficult to figure out why that's happening. CEOs are people that are going to be inundated with their own people from their company and their own shareholders all day long during the day. The only time they have to catch up with things that they might consider to be ancillary or not at the very top of their list, which is us, unfortunately, at that moment when you're trying to prospect, is after hours. And on Sundays in particular, almost all CEOs and CMOs, I guarantee you, are working on Sunday afternoon to get caught up and prepare for the next week. I know that our CEO, Mike Davis, will absolutely be pinging me on Sundays. So because I don't like to work on the weekend, what I'll actually do is I'll write an email on the week, during the week, or during regular hours during the week, and I'll save it to send on Sunday. And I've noticed a high response rate when I hit send on Sunday, them replying on the spot. So just a little tip for you guys as to how you might get greater success on when you actually reach out to people. So there's a picture of me and Bobby Morelli in our finest attire. I find this interesting because they call themselves the plaid stallions if they're not wearing any plaid, apparently. Yeah, so one of the questions that I found interesting and something that I think has changed the most recently, I asked the question, you know, what kind of attire do you prefer to see on a media sales associate? And I think this is one of the biggest changes we've seen over the years is this switch from professional to business casual. And guys, don't underestimate this, especially if you've got an important sales call. First impressions are so important. Treat it as though you were going on a job interview every time. If you've got an important call that you're going on, you're going for a face-to-face meeting, one of the things I've noticed is this definition of business casual keeps getting more and more casual and less business. But what I would say, don't mistake that for still not, you know, looking good and looking professional. But what I've noticed is that the people that, you know, that are, you want to emulate the people that you're going to call on. And more I'm walking into these ad agencies where you have a 30-something-year-old who owns the agency, and he's got a ton of like 20-something-year-olds working underneath him. And that person he's wearing, he might be dressed casual, but that casual clothing is not cheap, and it is not dull. It looks fairly new, and it looks like he dropped some money on it. So whereas before I used to insist on all my salespeople walking in with a suit and tie on, man, if you walk in there like that today, you're absolutely going to look like what I'd call, old school or old media. And in the past, I've had some older reps, my age and older, who walked in those meetings, and I've gotten feedback later that they just weren't where they were looking for, and they seemed old school to them, and how could they possibly know what they were talking about in the world that they live in today? So make sure you're not underestimating that. There's nothing wrong with having a well-made sports coat and a well-made shirt and something that fits you particularly. So that is something that I think I've seen evolve recently. Just a few things that have been a major difference from what we've seen in the past. We also had asked the question of these executives, how many, excuse me while I'll read the question, with initial email correspondence, which, wait a second, I read the wrong question. This particular question asked how many, what is the appropriate length of an email? Which format do you prefer? And we gave them a few choices. And imagine this, none of these people that you're going to be reaching out with wanted a heavy message of lots of detail or 10 or more sentences used. I think this becomes, what I found to be true is the higher up the food chain you get within a company, the less words they want to see. So, if you get to somebody who is more of a taskmaster within the company that is responsible for actually implementing the program, they're going to want to see a little bit more information. But if you're reaching out to executives, they're going to be more inclined to want to see less information. You should be really critical of yourself. Take the time to read over these emails that you're sending and, see, look, is there a way that I could say this with fewer words? I would ask myself that every single time. Is there actually words in there that need not be in there? If you read through this, I think you'll find that there's actually some words that you could take out. The next question we asked was about grammar and how important it is. It's very important to these people. Again, just like the clothes that you might wear that when you walk in, the way that you present yourself grammatically in your emails is also very important to these individuals. I'm awful at it. I don't know what it is, but there is something in my brain where I just read what I think it is I want to say as opposed to the actual words on the email. So in order to get around that, what I'll typically do is if I'm writing an important email to an executive or somebody at a large company, I will write the email and then I'll walk away from it and come back and then I'm like, oh my God, who wrote this? Like this couldn't have been me. What the hell was I thinking? It's just amazing how many words I'll get wrong on there that spell check doesn't catch because they're actual words, but they're not the right words. So that's something that I would recommend you do. Just take some time to get away from it so that you read what is actually said as opposed to what you thought you were reading. We asked them about their time and how their time should be used. Let's see. When the actual question that we asked here is, when listening to a voicemail message, how would you rank the following, where 1 would be most prompt you to return a cold call from a media sales executive, and 4 would be the least likely to have you return a call from a media sales executive? And we gave them a few options here. We said, provided information on the knowledge of the company or industry, was personable and showed signs of a familiarity with you, was articulate and sounded knowledgeable, or was brief and got to the point. So what we found to be true in the way that they ranked it was that you provided some information on knowledge of your company or industry. There's been a lot of debate, I think, on, especially when presentations come out, you should definitely do your homework, but it's important to appear, I believe, that you're an expert in the thing that you're trying to share with them. And, this brings up, to me, one of the things I see mistakes made when people try to leave a voicemail or leave an email is they might use a lot of industry jargon. Industry jargon is not the same as industry knowledge. And for those of you who know Dan Harlicker, he used to call it Valpak vomit. You know, are you talking in just normal words and normal language? You know, I think recently we had a contest, and I'm not sure who won it. Sally, do we have a winner for the elevator pitch contest that we did?
I don't think we had a winner. I think they drew the names, you know, based on who the entries were. So we didn't have a specific winner. I know that the gal, our guest speaker from Coupon U, went through them and she picked the ones that she thought were some of our best. People like Joe Bolognese and KJ. So, and it was absolutely, you know, brevity is important, and not doing the quote unquote Valpak vomit.
Yes, I'm going to give you a real stripped down example of how I do that. Both of those points I think are very important. And when the question's asked to me, somebody came to me during that time and said, "Hey, are you going to get on your elevator pitch?" I think I would just upset everybody if I told them what my elevator pitch was. And they said, "Why? What is it?" I said, "I just say I sell advertising." And I can tell you that's all I say. That is my elevator pitch. And 100% of the time, they go, "Oh, really? Tell me more." And, you know, the way I look at it is if you're on an elevator and you said some of the stuff I've heard people say is their elevator pitch, you could not get off that elevator quick enough, because it would be something along the lines of, "Yeah, so we provide solutions that encourage consumers to visit a business and increase their profit." I mean, who says that? Who talks like that? I mean, think about who you want to talk to at a party. That's the way I always imagine. Imagine if you were at a party and a stranger walked up to you and said, "What do you do?" You know, do you want that stranger to hang around and have a drink with you? Then you don't want to say something that sounds that canned or that phony. Imagine how you would describe to a friend or a relative what you would do, somebody you're familiar with. You know, say something that's an engaging and just normal speech pattern. So that's some advice I would give. Personally, I've seen salespeople that are really good at their job do this particular thing well. And again, this is one of those categories where I'm not suggesting to you that this is the only way it gets done. It's more important that you find your particular technique and what works for you, because not everybody's going to get everything done. I tend to find just casual speak works better for me than when I try to be very technical or professional in my speak. But that works well for me. So you got to make sure it works well. But when I say does it work well for you, are you being hypercritical about is it working for you? Like, not just is that comfortable for you, but does that actually generates results for you? And don't be afraid to ask people's opinions, and friends of yours, the people that know will give you critical feedback on the emails that you send. For me personally, I have a person that I bounce a lot of this stuff off of. If I'm going to try something new or I've got an important email to send, you guys know Jay Loeffler. A lot of you probably know him. He works on the CPG and OTC side of the business, essentially doing the same thing that I do. You know, he's my go-to guy that I know that if it's ridiculous or I just got my head up my ass and I'm not really thinking about who the person I'm talking to is, he's the first one to tell me. So have that person around you that you respect and can give you good feedback on what your message is. One person that I heard speak once, her name is Jill Conrath. I want to give her credit for it. She gave us some really good advice once. She came and spoke to us about what the critical aspects of a first reach out to a prospect is. You know, if you're cold calling, whether it be through email or through voicemail, what the most critical things are. She stressed getting down to business. Guys, I can tell you that I get solicited by salespeople all the time. If that email doesn't start out with exactly what your point is, or the voicemail doesn't, I don't read it. Hell, I don't even read the emails of people within our company. It's a well-known joke, and not a very good one, I guess, around the company, that Mike Hayes just doesn't read emails. I just don't read long emails. If you can't tell me in a few words what it is you're trying to get me to understand, then I'm not interested. I bet you I've got over 1,000 unread emails in my email box, because I get too many emails to spend a lot of time trying to understand what it is you're trying to communicate. So I believe that most top-level executives feel the same way about this. So are you getting down to business? I would have in that very first sentence, there should be something compelling enough to make them want to read the second. And one of those
Hey,
things
Mike,
could be.
can I ask you, oh, I'm sorry. I was going to ask, do you feel this way since we've got a whole different, all kinds of audience on the phone, people are calling on plenty of small businesses, do you feel like small business owners are the same way, get down to business in the email or the voice message?
You know what, it's been, I'm going to be the first one to admit, it's been a long time since I called on mom and pops. I grew up calling on mom and pops, so it's been a while. And I was just going to show you guys real quick. I got 5,265 unread emails because people send emails that have too many words in them. But what I will open every single time and read, no matter how long it is, if somebody sent me an email and said, Mike Davis said, you better believe I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it every time, right? You know, so get that referral out. Is it the same for small businesses? I've got to guess it is, because these people may not be running national companies, but they're very busy doing everything that needs to be done within their company. They're not just the CEO. They're not just the founder of the company. Sometimes they're the person working the cash register. So I got to imagine they want you to get down to business as well. Show you've done your homework. Like, are you dropping something on them that shows you're at least somewhat vaguely familiar with who they are? And you can do that by mentioning a recent newsworthy event. I subscribe to a lot of emails that I just skim the headlines really quick to look for those brands that we're currently working on to find that newsworthy event. State a strong value proposition. I mean, is there something that you can particularly do for them? Do you have some experience in their category? Is there another brand that you're working with that's a competitor of theirs? Share a fresh perspective. You know, very often I will, in the emails, briefly as I can, state that, hey, I know that you have an issue. And one of the things, this is both a blessing and a curse for me personally, and I think Sally would agree with me because she's gotten to witness this about me, having worked so closely with me, is that I have a very blunt and straightforward approach to what's on my mind. And that is actually refreshing to buyers that don't know me or don't have to engage with me all the time, because that would be too much if you were around me all the time. Somebody who's blunt and straight to the point all the time would get old. Am I right, Sally, having been there with me?
Been there, done that.
Yeah. So while I can be very blunt and to the point, that can be abrasive to somebody that's around me all the time, it's actually refreshing to a person who has to take calls from salespeople that are hemming and hawing and beating around the bush all the time. I will absolutely in the very first email say, hey, I know that you have an issue with degradation in your price when you send a lucrative offer to somebody who is already your customer. I have a solution to that. I conversion down to the household level with Valpak and get you shared mail pricing. When can I talk to you? I don't say can I talk to you. I say when can I talk to you? I can guarantee you they're not used to being talked to in that way. It's not disrespectful, because here's what's disrespectful. Wasting their time is disrespectful. And if you're using too many words and you're not getting to the point, you're not bringing a fresh perspective, that's disrespectful.
And you sound more confident, I think.
And you sound more confident, yeah. Oh, speaking of confidence, here's the other thing I would say that I think can help you, because I see people get nervous about calling, especially in large companies, and calling maybe the CEO or whatever. Here's something that you can feel is better than them about, and it's the thing to keep in mind. They may understand their business better, and they may have gotten further along in business than you. They don't understand Valpak as well as you do. That you can have complete confidence about, and that's what you should have in your mind when you call them. You're always going to be better off when you sound like you're speaking to them on a one-on-one level as a peer, as to somebody who's way down the chain, who's begging for an appointment or begging for their attention. They got people doing that to them all day long in their own company. And the way that you get to their level is to remind yourself that as big and as successful as they may be, they still don't know Valpak the way that you do. Eliminate the self-serving verbiage. Oh, my God. I hear this stuff all the time, and it'll just make you sick. Nobody cares. That's why, Sally, when you ask me how long I've been doing this, it's like my eyes roll, because it doesn't matter how long I've been doing this. Longevity means nothing, okay? Longevity nowadays is almost like it can work against you, actually. So I never get into things like how long we've been around or how many households do we deliver to, or there's a state-of-the-art printing facility. We used to love to say that when the VMC with them, but they don't care. Like, what's in it for them? So anything that you feel like is serving you rather than them, just remove that. Sound like a trusted peer. We already talked about that. You know, I write scripts all the time, but I never read them. I write them and I set them apart. And here's why. I don't care how good you think you are at reading, you will always sound canned and like you're reading. You know, I actually have telemarketers call me sometimes, and I'll stop them and I'll say, hey, look, here's what you're doing wrong. If you take my advice and you call me back, I'll listen to you. But until then, I got to go. They almost never call me back, but it's because I can hear it. Like they're reading some script and it's awful and I can't take it. So what I'll do is I'll write this script and I'll actually set it to the side. The act of writing it is not having to refer to it. The act of writing it is to get your brain familiar with the words that you want to say. Jill Conrath, Selling Big Companies, is the book that you can look at if you want to know more than that. And while we're talking about books, I'll share with you something that works for me personally. I don't generally read books like this. She came and spoke to us, and that's the reason why I know these things. Just for me personally, I don't read books that give me the 1, 2, 3 on how to do sales. I like to read books that speak to the human nature, speak to sociology, speak to economics, and then as I'm reading it, I try to apply what I'm learning in that book to my job. And here's why I think it's important to read books like that, because it's important for you to be able to think for yourself. And here's why it is. There is no script. I used to get so offended because we used to have a marketing department that used to like to use this phrase that we need to load the lips of the salespeople. Let me tell you, when you're trying to become a great salesperson, you're calling on large accounts, there is no loading of your lips, okay? There's no script that somebody can give you that's going to serve you every single time you go on a sales call. You're going to absolutely have to be good at thinking for yourself, listening to what's being said to you and applying that in a new way to that unique situation. And you can only do that if you've made a practice in your own life of doing that. And to me, reading those types of books that don't tell you how to do it, it just gives you information on the things and the elements in the environment that will help you make a decision and you come to your own conclusions, will make you better than that, in my opinion. So if you're looking for a favorite author of mine, Malcolm Gladwell is a great author. All of his books are excellent. He even has a podcast that you can listen to called Revisionist History. One of the other questions that we asked, personality. This one was always one that intrigued me a lot, the way people, their personalities and how that relates to great salespeople. And here's how these different personality types ranked. And as you can see at the very top, professional and personable were the two things that ranked at the very top. And if that sounds familiar to you, it should, because that's what I was talking about earlier, about how you can be knowledgeable about it, yet speak at their level and be personable. And not use braggadocio or not use self-serving verbiage. Those are all things that fit well within professional and personal. Hey, and guess what? It doesn't matter if you're a happy person to them, okay? I hope you're happy, but being happy and humble, you know, I hear people on the phone, they go, oh, if I could just get 5 minutes of your time, you know, I would love to meet with you. They don't care if you would love to meet with them. You know, I've interviewed so many people for the National Sales Club, and the one thing that will make me not hire somebody immediately for this national sales job is if they start telling me why this job is important to them and how much they would love it and how happy it would make them. You know, I know it's going to sound like I'm a cruel person, but I don't care about their happiness. I care about filling my position with somebody who can actually sell. I think if I do that, we'll all be happy because we'll make money as a company and they'll be successful in the job. Anybody seen Tommy Boy? It's a great sales movie. I recommend if you've never seen it before. Great comedy. One of the things that we asked is, you know, what makes up a perfect rep for you? And some of the choices that we gave them is your best friend, brings donuts, remembers your birthday, always ask about your family. Super easy to place orders with, always on call, and rarely makes mistakes. Focused on campaign enhancements, continuously delivering new ideas and campaign enhancements strategies. So you may be guessing which one of these are at the top. Imagine that. Nobody cares about friends and donuts. And I know that I just insulted about a quarter of the people on the phone, so I apologize for insulting you. This is the one that gets local salespeople's ire up more than anything else, I would say. I would say that this is probably, Sally asked me earlier, you know, what's the difference between a local account and a large account sale? See, somebody just hung up on me. I like my donuts and my friends. I'm not going to listen to my case. But this is something that I noticed to be a big difference between large account and local sales. And going into the large account situation, you know, they want you to bring solutions. They don't want you to bring donuts. And I can tell you, if you walk into a large company, regardless of the people, they may enjoy your donuts, but if you don't bring like hardcore solutions, then they're going to forget you ever came there. The donuts will not make them buy from you. And what I found to be true is that people often use things like gifts and donuts as a crutch for not being able to bring solutions and actual value to the situation. You know, it's not even being super easy to work with that they're concerned with. Their big concern is the things that drive revenue in their company. Fight Club, if you've never seen that before, Tyler Durden was selling soap, so that's why that is on here. We asked the question, hey, when things are in a pinch, what kind of rep is it that is most important to you? Easy to get along with and never quits. Never questions your decisions, has average knowledge of media and your industry. Expert in your industry but is new to media. Expert in media but is new to your industry. So it's kind of a flip-flop on those last two. Innovative and master of business strategies but spotty on detail. So great at business strategies but not so good on the administrative part. And you can see how the reactions to these were or how they ranked them. And here, the thing that they're most interested in is not in their industry so much as they're interested in what do you know about what it is that you're selling. And, you know, that's why when you have the opportunity to learn about new products or new things at Valpak, I think it's very important to at least jump on and learn so that you can speak to all the different things that you know about the industry and about the products that we sell. And again, you know, there's a running theme here. They don't care about happy or humble or donuts. They don't care if you're easy to get along with. And, you know, this is another mistake I see. It's the difference between people who take orders and the people who create orders. If you find yourself just waiting on the order to come in every week and you're not challenging your client to do things differently, to test things differently, then I promise you, you have one foot in the grave. If you're just sitting there waiting for that order to come in, then you're not a partner. And that can be challenging sometimes. It means that you're going to have to challenge the norm for them. You're going to have to push your client outside of their comfort zone. And I know that that's not normal. I know that it's more comfortable for you to just take their order or do what they're saying to do. Don't be afraid to challenge them in the meeting. If you feel convicted or you know something doesn't work or you know what they're doing is wrong, challenge them. It's okay. I mean, do it professionally, of course. You know, we have situations all the time where people will send us creative because they have expensive creative departments and they have expensive creative design agencies that will design ads that I know are just wrong for Valpak. They may work for their magazines, they may work for broadcast, but you guys know there's a different way people engage with Valpak, and that those designs that are very brand heavy don't always translate well inside of Valpak. And there's been many times where I just had to say, look, I can't let you do it this way. It's just not going to work. I'm not going to be responsible for this. And it's very often uncomfortable to take that approach. But if it comes down between, you know, you saving the business and keeping it long term, I can't tell you how many times I've had them come back to me and thank me, yeah, thank you for giving me some direction on this. Most of the time they're going to appreciate what you're trying to do for them. So this was the last question we asked for the people in the survey, and I think it was the most fun question that we asked. We basically said, where's the question? I apologize. I'm trying to get my notes in front of me here. We said, imagine that you're waiting in the express line at the grocery store and making a last-minute candle purchase for your child's birthday party, but you're running late, and there's an elderly woman in front of you with well over 10 items, and she looks like a sweetheart, but she has coupons, a checkbook, and wants to make small talk with everyone. What do you do? Now, the reason why I asked this question is because I had this thought that people in this industry are very impatient. So I thought this might get underneath the hide and see, how it is that they really feel. And I gave them a few choices here. Take a deep breath and relax. You wouldn't want to see how impatient. You wouldn't want Granny to see how impatient you are. So what if you're a little late? The next was ask Granny if you can skip. You only have one item. People will understand it's your kid's birthday. In other words, take your chances on another non-express line or flag down a manager. Report Granny's disregard for the rules. She's a rule breaker and they're the worst. So how do you think they replied? There you go. They don't want to wait. They don't want to wait. See, I know this, you might be saying, what does this have to do with my job? I'm not having anybody wait in line, but you are. If you go in there and you're not getting to the point and you're not bringing something relevant, guess what? They're going to hop over to another line, even if it's not a non-express line, even if it's seems like less the best option. They will get away from you. When you go into these meetings, make sure that you've completely taken your presentation down to just the things that are important to them, and be prepared to talk to just the things that are important to them. Don't make them, sit through a lot of information because you feel like that somebody's told you, or your manager or somebody's told you that, these are the things you got to cover, or these are the things that are important to us. Spend time focusing what's important. I think the good news is nobody wants to report Granny as a rule breaker, but they will walk away from you. Now, I've also did a survey at one time to a large sampling of about 100 people in the franchise network, salespeople in the franchise network. And there was a couple of things that popped out at me because I separated the answers of the top salespeople in the company from everybody else to see if they answered any of those questions differently than everybody else. And I had 2 different questions on there that they categorically answered differently than everybody else. So you got to understand, these top producers were only about 5 or 6 top producers as compared to the other 100 in the group. So these people, but it was easy to pick them out because these people weren't just a little bit better. They were producing millions of dollars when everybody else was producing tens of thousands of dollars. So these people were significantly different. I wanted to get to the bottom of what is it that makes them different. One of the things that jumped out is the way they value themselves. I asked the question, the best way to describe me and my profession is A, make sales calls, B, sell Valpak print and digital, C, think strategically and develop solutions and communicate effectively, or D, create marketing/advertising campaigns for businesses that help them grow. Now, when I ask this question a lot, I say, hey, anybody want to guess how these people replied or what they applied to? A lot of people want to go to D, but here's what I found interesting. They actually applied C. They categorically gave that answer. And this, to me, if you don't take anything else from this meeting, here's these last 2 slides. Take this away from this meeting if you want to be better in sales. What I find to be true about the very top salespeople is they don't rely on somebody else to define their self-value for them. They don't allow somebody to tell them, you sell advertising, or you sell single panels, or you sell slate, or whatever it is. They don't allow them to do that. They have defined their own self-value within them that has nothing to do with Valpak, nothing to do with the franchisees that they work for, or anybody else. Think strategically and develop solutions and communicate effectively has nothing to do with advertising or sales. It is a skill that you can take to any company and sell anything. Hell, not just sell, but you can be good in a number of different jobs. They have found an inner value that has nothing to do with this narrow category. But very often people will reps will fall into these other answers, or they'll fall into this one because they sit there and they let their boss tell them every day what it is they're supposed to do. What's most important to you? Is it making your boss happy, or is it finding happiness for yourself and being really good at who you are? I mean, it might sound like I'm dissing your boss here, but I'm not, because that's actually what he wants too. You want the same things, because if you're happy and you're doing a really good job and you found your inner value, you're going to be better for him. How do I know that? Because this is what the top producers say and are true about them, and they want you to be a top producer. The second question that they categorically answered differently from everybody else, I said, hey, when you see this picture of Mount Everest, what do you think? And I gave them 4 options. Cold, go around, that looks really cool or majestic, or I'd like to be up there. They categorically said, I'd like to be up there. The second thing that I found to be categorically true about top salespeople at Valpak is that they want to be the very best every single day. When we have an award ceremony like the one we had at Coupon U, and all those winners got up on the stage, Josh Jameson was up there this time. Josh was one of the people that I asked these questions, by the way, a few years ago when I did this survey. There's 2 types of people in the room. There's some people that look up there and go, I'm going to be Josh next year. There's some people that look up there and go, I'm going to be Brian Connigan next year. They see that I'm going to be Lynn Yopko. The different people, the top salespeople, they see us on that stage. And then there's another group of people go, wow, that must be nice. That must really be nice to get up on that stage and win money and be successful. I don't think I could ever be them. I don't think I could ever be that good. That must be great. You know, ask yourself, what kind of person are you? You know, when there's a better place to be, or there's a top performer, are you always thinking to yourself, I want to be there, how do I get there? Are you thinking, it's probably out of reach for me. I'd be happy, you know, to just get halfway there. If I could just get halfway there, that'd be cool. Another part of their attitude that makes them want to be on the top is that they're risk takers. They don't mind falling off the cliff to try to get to the top. I guarantee you, if you reach for the highest point you can here in your sales career, you will fall on your face. I guarantee you that every single time. This particular profession that I've chose to be in large account sales, I've always said you're either a hero or a zero. I mean, you are one account away from being the best salesperson in the company or losing one of the biggest accounts that we have in the company and being the worst in other people's eyes. But you got to be the type of person who's comfortable waking up every day, taking that chance. Otherwise, you'll always just strive to be mediocre, and guess what? You'll be mediocre. I like to tell a funny story sometimes about taking chances and taking risk and volunteering. When I was putting myself through college, I worked at a textile plant. Let me tell you, it was a crappy job. It was hot. It stunk. There was nothing good about it. But there was this lab job that I heard was going to be opening up to some of us college kids. And in the lab, there was air conditioning. And the foreman, and I overheard the foreman talking about they had to get a couple of guys that was in engineering to go into the lab who is going to college for chemical engineering. Well, let me tell you something. I chose a major based on the least amount of math and science, so I couldn't have been further away from chemical engineering. But I had heard them have this conversation, so they had us all lined up, and they walked up and they said, who's here for chemical engineering? Well, you better bet my arm shot straight up in the air. And they pulled me aside, and they put me in the air conditioning. And I spent the rest of that summer in the air conditioning, listening to radio, mixing chemicals that I had no idea what I was doing. However, I learned, and I got to sit in air conditioning. The other guys hated me because they knew that I had lied about it. However, I wanted something, and I wasn't afraid to take a chance. I wasn't afraid of falling on my face. Now, am I saying go do things that are wrong or whatever? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, if you want something bad enough, don't be afraid to raise your hand and volunteer to do it and to take chances. So those are kind of the 2 big categories that I would leave with you about who I've seen salespeople that perform better or at the top of their game. It's their self-value and their willingness to reach for the top. So I think
that'd be true. That'd be true of any position, don't you think?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Very cool.
So with that, I feel like I've spent a lot of time talking. I want to open it up to some questions. I'd love for some people to challenge me. I'm sure I offended somebody about the donut. Who out there wants to just kind of challenge me on a notion or something I've said?
Anybody want to take a swipe at them, especially about the donut?
This is Jen from Kentucky.
Hi, Jen.
I don't want to take a swipe at you, but I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So on the emails, sometimes I feel like I'll get the first meeting with like a one-line email, and that works really well. And then we'll meet, and I'll have information to bring back to them. And for some reason, let's say that we don't get another meeting on the books, and they want me to email them, and I'll be typing it. It's like an insane amount, and I'll be thinking, like, I know they're not going to read all of this. What do you do in that situation if, like, you can't really get in front of them, you can't really get them on the phone, but it's information they want?
Okay, so I'm gonna suggest that maybe it's not your second email where you're having a problem, it's your first visit where you're having a problem. I would back up, and I would very critically evaluate myself and what is it that I'm doing or not doing in that meeting that is causing them to not want to see me again. One thing I can tell you is if you find yourself very often asking for homework assignments as opposed to being told homework assignments voluntarily, then you're not engaging the person to want to find a, you know when you have a really successful meeting when the client starts to find fits for you about what they think is going to work. And if you're not reaching that point, is it possible that that maybe you're not walking away from that meeting with something that's engaged them enough to have you come back as opposed to sending them an email solution?
Okay, I have an individual account that I'm gonna that I want to ask you about, not on this call, that I think that you worked on my office with, but it was that the long email thing I think had to do with part of it, and I wasn't on the account, but I wanted to ask you on the side about that.
Yeah, sure, we can do that.
Okay.
But well, again, I'm making some categorical statements here and comments. There are times and people who can be trusted, I think, with a long email, and you've got to get good at reading people on the call if they're that type of person or not. I know that I've had clients that I know if I send them a long email, they'll read the whole thing and they'll get it very succinctly. But if you've only met with somebody one time, I would work really hard to not have that email long. And the way that you can do that is you can say, are there parts of this email that can wait till later? What is step one that I've got to get cleared off or agreed upon right now? And maybe just have that be your first email. What are the questions?
And you all don't have to stick to this topic that Mike just presented. You can ask him anything about, the sales or how he made, because, quite honestly, Mike started off as a rep just like everybody else, or, it had to get through college and get out there. What was your first job out of college, by the way, Mike? Because we got a lot of youngins on the call, too, that are, in their first few years out of school or new to work.
My first job out of college was I interned in an ad agency in Atlanta, and I worked at night at a TGI Fridays. And I actually got written up for not having enough flair, like pins and a goofy hat. And it was funny because a little bit later they made a movie. I can't remember the name of it, but I think Jennifer Aniston was in it, and she got in trouble for the same thing. I'm like, hey, that happened to me.
Yes. And why do you think you have made it where you've made it in sales? What it is about you professionally that got you where you?
Here's one thing I would say. Here's one thing I would say to the group, and there's a lot of books written on this and all, but there's a lot of great people I've met over the years. They've all had like big challenges to overcome, and everybody has challenges, right? And everybody listening on the phone right now, I'd like you to think to yourself, what's that personal challenge that you've had in your life that maybe is a crutch or a thing that you feel like is holding you back? I'm here to tell you that these challenges in life make people better. And when you ask me why I think I'm good at this job, A lot of people know this about me, but a lot of people don't know about me. I had a very serious learning disability when I was a kid, and I had a bad case of dyslexia, and I wasn't able to read until I got into high school. And people are shocked when they hear that. They go, how is that possible? Let me tell you, if you have a reading disability or you have a learning disability in rural upper Mobile County, Alabama, no one cares. No, there's no special class for you. No one's going to help you out. They don't even understand what it is. So, you know, I had to learn and I had to adapt. And I know that that experience in my life made me a good salesperson because I was forced to do a couple of things. I was forced, in order to get by and people not to understand or think that I was stupid or or find out that I couldn't read, I got really good at not reading words, but really good at reading people. I figured out really quickly that if you were able to engage with a person, understand where they were coming from, and speak to them in ways that made them interested, then they would ignore everything or any fault about you. And they would actually try to help you through every single situation. I also got very good at speaking and communicating. I wasn't stupid, I just couldn't read. I could hear words all the time and learn them and regurgitate them and string them together in ways that people wanted to hear. So when you see me stand up on the stage at Coupon U and talk to 1,000 people and go, well, how did you do that? Well, it's easy to do that when you turn a weakness about you into a strength. So when you ask how did I end up in sales, this is why I ended up in sales, because I had to learn these skills that translate well into trying to engage people, getting them to believe in what they're saying. And the important thing I always say is getting them to believe that your ideas are their ideas, that they own what you're saying, and then they want to let go of their money. So, you know, but that can translate into a lot of different things. And everybody on the phone, like if you have that thing about you that you think is a weakness, how can you overcompensate for that to make you better than the next person?
Love that. Very interesting. And you certainly are not afraid of getting in front of a crowd now, that's for sure.
No.
Now, did you have certain, you said you mentioned earlier that you had books that you read, people that you like about, that, you know, that you helped develop you? You named one. Is there any other one that you like?
Oh, well, Malcolm Gladwell is the one that I've read all of his books. I love Freakonomics. They have a couple of versions of that book that's great to pick up. Another person I like is Tim Ferriss. You can pick him up. He has a top-rated podcast, by the way. What's cool about his podcast is that he actually interviews top performers in all different fields, so you can actually hear from different people about what it is that they do well. And I'll drop a couple of other side things on you guys that I've found useful lately. I was reaching a point not too long ago where I was getting really stressed out. We were in the platinum sale. There was a lot of changes. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know. And I was getting particularly stressed out, and I started using this meditation app called Headspace. But what it did for me was it made me start realizing how I was getting in my own head and worried about things I didn't have any control over. And I think that's something a lot of salespeople do. Before they even make a sales call, they start thinking, oh, what if the person is mean to me, or what if they hang up on me, or what if I stumble or trip on my words? But you haven't even made the call yet. Like you're worrying about things that's not even happened. You know, so when you practice things like that in your head, that's actually what happens on the back end. That's what you actually end up doing because you practiced it. So besides reading, I think that's a really good app you can use, Headspace.
Cool.
I have a question
for Mike. Good.
Are you using Engage emails for large prospecting?
We have started using Engage for large prospecting. And here's what I'll tell you. And this is not a slight on our marketing team at all. Our marketing team is awesome. We have great people working for us, but they're not salespeople. What I learned right away is that in order for that to work for us, what we started doing was we started having the salespeople write their emails, but we would templatize the emails that worked well for them. In other words, Mary Carlson is one of my top sales producers. She produces about $12 million annually of revenue. When she's got an email that is working, like we'll pull that off and we'll create a template and engage for it. And it'll be like something really specific. It'll be like, allow us to reduce the cost of your solo mail through selective targeting, something along those lines, and we'll only send it to people that might have the need for something like that. So our pool of opportunity in terms of numbers aren't as great as yours. So I think that a little more customization is required if you're calling on these larger lines. Does that answer the question?
Yep.
But I think they're making those available to you guys too. If not, Sally, can you check into that?
I don't know about the ones that you all are using.
Yeah. I mean, could you ask
I'm
Amanda?
not aware of that. Oh, I'm sure if you asked, actually, I think if you asked Rochelle or Lauren, they'd be able to tell you that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we should be doing that. It never occurred to me that if those aren't
that would
out
be
there,
great.
then we should. Yeah.
Well, I remember an interesting thing that Jay Loeffler mentioned when we had him speaking at one of our classes at headquarters was that you all tested a subject line that worked best for you all. Like you were looking at opening rates and the subject line focus for growth was the one that got opened the most.
Yeah, Jay
something as simple as that.
Yeah, Jay actually pulled that off of an annual report. It was like in the first few lines, and he sent that to the client. Here's what I would say. If you can find buzzwords or words that you know are being thrown around the company, that is absolutely, what you want to do. And you can find those in annual reports for these large companies, or you can find it on their website. But here's the thing I'll caution you. It's funny to me. I've watched emails and sales over all these years. There's always these flavors of the month that come along, and I'll get like multiple emails with the same subject line in it. If you find that you're chasing somebody else's example of what works, it's probably already not working anymore. So you got to get good at kind of innovating your own thing that gets people's attention.
I also want to speak to, I don't know if you all are opening, I hope you are, because you should be getting them in your inbox every morning around 7 a.m., an email that's taking you to Salesforce called The Spark, which are like daily tips from us, and I highly recommend if you aren't opening that, you do, because they're really, really good. But one of the speakers, or I don't want to call speakers, sales gurus that Mike referred to earlier, Jill Conrad, she had an article recently on assumptions you should make on every sales call when you're in the field, and that's going to be an article, I think it's going to come out this week, that we're going to release, that is so good. It's things in your head you should be assuming. You should, things like how busy they are and that their attention span, that they don't like lots of words and things like that. So please be looking for that, because it's really good stuff that's very similar to what Mike's been talking about today. Any other questions? Because we're right at 1 minute till 5 Eastern time, so I don't want to take Mike past his. Take one more question.
I have a question. This is Dana. This is Dana from Chicago. Dana from Chicago. How you doing?
Good.
Can you hear me still? I'm losing service now, of course, because I'm driving.
No, I hear you fine.
Okay, great. So I just had a question for Mike. I'm a new rep. I've only been with the company about a month. I've been in sales prior. But at my prior sales experience, I had a book of business, and right now I'm focusing on just new business. And I just wanted to see, when you guys, you get in a slump, what do you do to motivate yourself? And I was just making calls and calls and calls, and I finally went on a really great appointment and made a huge sale. But, there's the weeks where I'm just like, I can't, get myself out of this slump. So I just want to see what you do to motivate yourself to keep on going.
That's a really good question. So what I would say to that is, you said you had that really good sale. Anytime you have something good happen, that is the perfect time to jump on more sales calls or to make prospecting or new cold calls, because you will have that sound of happiness and success in your voice that is unmistakable, a sound of confidence and success. And you got to absolutely, because I know that You know, I'm guilty of this at times. When something really good happens, I want to just jump up and do a happy dance, and instead of sitting down and making another call. And the other thing I would say is, look, I know your boss might not like this, but if you're just having a bad day and you're just not in it, you know, that's probably not the day to make calls. Like, find something else productive to do, but don't allow it to become a crutch, and don't allow it to become a habit. Treat it as a true mental break from the thing that's bringing you down, and get back up and get better. And the other thing I would say, if you're not taking care of yourself personally, and you're having this kind of down period, then that could be your problem. And a lot of people discount this in sales, especially in sales, because I don't mean to stereotype, but a lot of us are hard driving, smoking, drinking, staying up too late. There's a bunch of this personality that, for whatever reason, falls into sales. However, what I would say is that is absolutely a path to depression and fatigue and not being your best. Nothing wrong with that. God knows I like to party as much as the next guy, but you better believe I am up every morning running. I love to run because that's what, you know, frees up my mind and keeps me physically fit, and a fit body is a fit mind, and you got to eat well too. And I know I'm sounding preachy right now, but if you're eating processed foods and you're eating junk food and you're drinking too much and you're not eating whole foods and you're not eating healthy, all of that is going to lead to you being a less happy person, less confident, and more fatigued. So that, I mean, that's, no one else is probably going to tell you that, but it's the truth.
Oh, it's absolutely true. And Mike, I wanted to add on to that one comment about having those bad days, because I used to be a sales leader with Valpak, and I started as a rep. I had sales reps. I know what that's like. The absolute best way to get back on your game in a bad day, when you're brand new, you're going to have to get help from somebody else. When you're a rep that's been around a while, you'll have this, is to go see happy customers. If I was having a bad day, I went to see my happy customers. First of all, they'll usually give you referrals to go see somebody, but you'll be reminded of why you're in this business. So if you're brand new, your sales leader can tell you who some of the happiest customers are, and you go visit them. You can go visit somebody else's client, and they'll pump you back up. They'll talk about their success and whatever, and they usually point and say, I know the guy next door, I know the person down the street, and send you off with referrals. I'll get you into a good mood, and going and being with other successful reps. If you're having a really bad day, spending an afternoon with a successful rep in your office gets you right back out of that.
Surround yourself with positive people, absolutely. Hey,
thank you.
Don't feel afraid to reach out to me, Mike_Hayes, Hayes @valpak.com. You know, like I warned you before, if you keep your email short, I'll read it. If you got a specific question about a client, or you want to call me up and chat, welcome to do that. I'm always happy to talk about sales and offer some very specific advice about how to help get you through your more challenging opportunities. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. We appreciate everything. And I will be sending the recording and the PowerPoint out for this to you all after. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.